It's now Monday evening, and I've honestly not been reading a lot today because I've had too much to do for school things. So I am just now in the evening. I've been sitting down with the overstory to catch up on my buddy read, and I'm almost done with the root section, which is what we had planned to read for the first week. My favorite chapter in the first section is definitely the Patricia Westerford. She is a scientist, and she is specifically looking at tree communication, which is something that I've become really interested in since coming across that as an idea through Peter Voblen's book. Voblen, I think it is. So that makes me all the more excited to read that book in its entirety. One thing I really wanted to mention in this reading vlog, which probably by the time that this goes up it's old news, but it is a SpringAthon tag that has been created by Skelly Dalling About the Books, I think is her channel name. And basically she has created a SpringAthon poetry challenge tag where she has asked people to read nature related poems or poems that she's chosen based on the prompts for the SpringAthon, and to encourage people to react to those poems and to share poems of their own for the prompts. I just think it's a fantastic idea. I'm definitely going to be making one of my own, although it might happen next week since I have to search for poems of my own to choose for the prompts. We are currently outside and it's actually snowing. Yeah, you can tell from it's snowing in May. So I'm currently reading A Sting in the Tail this evening to try to catch up with my buddy read, and I'm still behind, but I'm finding it actually really good. So there's a lot of information that I'm already finding really fascinating about bumblebees. I think I might have mentioned before that I'm quite afraid of bees. I had a classmate who was allergic, and there was one time when a bee got into his ear and he had to go to the hospital with emergency and everything. So I think I was so terrified by that as a child that it really stuck with me. So now for most of my adult years I've been really terrified by bees just by the sound of them. So I think one of the things that I've come to try to challenge as an adult is to learn more about them, so that I don't just find them terrifying, but that I can learn and look at them in a different way. There was a mention of a book that I just really wanted to read. It's called The Humble Bee, which is about bumblebees. Its life history and how to domesticate it in 1912, and apparently this book is still relevant. So this person who wrote it, he was interested, like the Victorian naturalists, he just had a lot of time on his hands and could use it as he wished. So he did a lot of studies about bumblebees, and that book is apparently still like a iconic text on bumblebees. I find that fascinating that in almost 100 years it's still relevant. Okay, so it is Wednesday morning, and I've been reading A Sting in the Tail by Dale Coulson this morning while I'm drinking my coffee, and I really wanted to check in with this one because it starts with a prologue with the author sharing some of his beginning interests in nature, which, to be honest, I would skip it if you are sensitive to animals being hurt, because there's parts in the prologue that really made me uncomfortable made me uncomfortable to read, and I decided to not read it again because I've actually started this book before. But the information about the bumblebees themselves I'm finding fascinating. There's things like bumblebees have a body temperature that is similar to humans, so they use a lot of energy to be able to keep that up. There's several things about the evolution of bees and their nature and characteristics that I'm finding really interesting. I do want to mention though that there is a section in is it the second chapter that the author talks about his interest in nature again. He sort of returns to the same topic as the prologue, and he shares some parts about taxidermy, his adventures into taxidermy. And I sort of wanted to make that as a disclaimer that this does include things like that, and his forays as a kid into nature is a little bit off-putting because he doesn't know what he's doing, so he makes a lot of mistakes. It isn't that he's killing animals in order to do taxidermy, it's more his description of the event itself that I thought I would at least give a slight warning about, so that you know what you're getting yourself into if you're interested in reading this book. It is now Thursday evening. It is almost 8:30. As I mentioned before, I am reading this one as my main nonfiction read at the moment, and I am almost a third of the way because this is almost 300 pages. So this is a book all about Patrick Barkham looking for all of the butterfly species in Britain during one summer. He wants to see them all, and he talks about when he sees one butterfly and he can't figure out which one it is, and then he sees another one and he thinks, oh, that doesn't actually look like the one I thought it was, and then realizes that it was a moth. And I think in general I haven't really thought about the differences and similarities between moths and butterflies, and it's quite interesting because the Swedish common word for moth is night butterfly. For example, one of the things that you can distinguish them in terms of appearance is the fact that butterflies have these club-like things at the end of the antenna, whereas moths have like sharp or thin antennas. So those things do not exist on moths, apparently. Oh yeah, the fact that the colors on butterflies are scales. I haven't really thought about the texture of butterflies because usually you don't see them very closely or for very long, but it kind of makes sense to me. Generally, when you are reading British nature writers, you will sort of see some similarities coming up again and again. For example, Watkins and Doncaster is a store that sell equipment for nature studies, and they also sell taxidermy things and just generally things like butterfly nets and things like that. And I've seen that store or that brand mentioned in so many British nature writing books. I've been feeling generally when I'm reading this one and A Sting in the Tail that I'm sort of reminded of this there's sort of this idea of an idyllic British countryside that comes up in these books, and especially sort of a lost time before nature was in such harsh decline. So now it is Saturday. Still working my way through this one, and I am now almost exactly halfway. Just the experience of sort of learning about the different species through the meticulousness of his aim with this book, I am enjoying. It does mean that I think I wouldn't recommend this as widely as I would if it was more on the cultural significance of butterflies or more generally about their behavior. I think this is very clearly structured after his goal of spotting every single butterfly species in the UK. So it is now Sunday evening, the 17th of May. It is the last day of the SpringAthon. So I have not finished The Butterfly Isles by Patrick Barkham. I still have about 140 pages left of this. I had made ambitious plans, and just realistically I just couldn't stick to them, so that's fine. It's part of life. I am planning to continue on with my nature reading for the rest of the month, since there's still 2 weeks left and I still have a lot of things to do for school, but I will be continuing to read through my nature books, and I will talk about what I actually finished in my wrap-up for May. But so far I am now, as I said, quite far into this, probably about like 2/3 of the way into this. One of the things that I've definitely realized as I've been reading this is that I probably find butterflies as a species to learn about as interesting as I do learning about the people who are fascinated by butterflies. So butterfly collectors, or just generally people who are interested in butterflies, tend to be or tend to have sort of an obsessive nature to do with them, and I find it fascinating as a psychology thing. Another thing I'm really liking about this book is that Patrick Barkham shares his enthusiasm for butterflies with his father. So there's several of the species that he is trying to find. He goes on journeys or various trips with his dad, and I think he was particularly introduced to this interest through his dad as well. So they have this shared interest, and there's something really familial and I don't know, heartwarming about that, to have that kind of interest that you can share with a parent, and to a parent have that kind of effect to introduce a kid to something amazing like the natural world. That is something that I really appreciate about this book, and he has actually dedicated this book to his dad as well. I went out to look for various resources and lists of butterflies in Sweden, and have found various websites and databases that I will be using to do some butterfly sightings of my own. I'm planning to, at least. So I'm thinking that I will use this as my curious adventure book, for read about something and then go do that thing. That's one of the challenges that I've created for Curious Adventure. If you don't know what that is, I will link the announcement video below. To read about something like an activity, butterfly sighting, and then spend at least some of June to go on walks and bike rides, specifically to look out for butterfly species. That's my plan. So I will be using some of the resources that I've found through my Googling today, to like sightings from other nature enthusiasts. It's sort of like a citizen scientist kind of database that I found today, that I think will be really useful as sort of at least a guide. So that was all for this reading log and for this readathon. I really hope that if you participated in the SpringAthon, that you enjoyed the experience of getting some nature writing, whether that was fiction or nonfiction. I hope you have found some inspiration as well from the tag and other various TBRs and videos and Instagram things that people have shared. I definitely have found several books that I am now interested in. So it's been a great resource for me, and just a load of fun to see so many people participating. So I hope that this is something that we can do again. I really enjoyed hosting it. So yeah, I think that was all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for everyone who has been joining in and sharing your thoughts and your reading with us. I hope you had fun. I hope you are having a good day, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.